Oshkosh Mayor segment of our Candidates Forum, presented by the League of Women Voters of Winnebago County and Oshkosh Media. I'm your moderator, Margie Davey, President of the Winnebago County League of Women Voters. We seek to inform citizens about major public policy issues and about candidates seeking office. We do not support or oppose any political party or candidate. Joining me on the panel tonight are Karen Schneider of the Oshkosh Herald and League member Kathy Propp. Two candidates are seeking election as City of Oshkosh Mayor. They are incumbent Steve Cummings and Deputy Mayor Lori Palmieri. The term of office is 2 years. Candidates, our timekeeper will give you cues. Thank you for keeping your answers short so that we can cover as many issues as possible. When you see the stop sign, that means period. If you insert a comma and keep talking, I will stop you.
What about a semicolon?
No.
You want that door closed?
At the conclusion of this forum, I will offer you each a 30-second opportunity to clarify or rebut something said earlier, if you wish. Audience, questions addressed to both candidates are welcome. Please submit in writing to the League representative. Candidates receive the first 2 questions in advance. So our first question, with a 2-minute time limit, will begin with Steve, and we ask you to please summarize your background, qualifications, and your reason for seeking election or re-election as the mayor of the City of Oshkosh.
All right, thank you, Margie. Well, the reason I'm running for mayor, I want to continue serving as your mayor. It's a nonpartisan position, so I can continue delivering the results and progress we've enjoyed since I've been in office, which has been 4 years. It's critical to maintain the positive momentum I have helped build. We need to stay on a progressive path while remaining financially responsible. We cannot risk going backwards. I have been a positive force of change, and change is all around us in the community. Look around you, the Riverwalk along the historic Fox. We've transformed the industrial heart of the city to a showplace for all to enjoy. The once blighted Best Western Hotel is filled with light at night. Evergreen Apartment Complex, Wisconsin Herd and Menominee Nation Arena, Oshkosh Corporation's global headquarters, the Howard, the Downtown Y, and now a potential $30 or $32 million mixed-use complex is being discussed for the north shore of the Fox River. The Sawdust District is coming alive. People only invest in thriving communities that have a strong leadership, a mayor and council with vision, a city manager and staff with a can-do attitude. It's called teamwork, and it's an overdrive in the City of Oshkosh. Investors only invest in winners. They do not invest in dying communities. Despite all the great things happening here, we have growing poverty and homeless, too many children on free and reduced lunches, and an increase in violence aimed at children. These are community issues that only the community can solve, but the mayor can bring people together just as I've done with Unity in the Community and other events. I love Oshkosh. I've been very busy changing people's attitudes about my hometown. Citizens are seeing and enjoying a changed city. We've earned a new respect throughout the state. I have a passion for Oshkosh, its past, its present, and its future, which has never been brighter. My visions for Oshkosh as mayor is to continue building a community our
Thank you,
children
Steve.
will want to call
Period.
home. Short word, home.
Home, yes. Okay, Lori, 2 minutes.
Thank you to the League and to the audience for being here tonight and giving me this opportunity. My name is Lori Palmieri. I am the choice for real change. And I'm a wife, a mother, a grandmother of 4 generations that call Oshkosh home. I also drive as a not-so-glamorous Uber service for all of them. I'm now serving my 2nd term on council and currently your deputy mayor. I have over 25 years experience in administration, legal, and land use. I received my bachelor's in urban and regional studies from UW-Oshkosh with a master's in urban planning from UW-Milwaukee. I also provide consulting services to nonprofits throughout Wisconsin that advocate for equity and inclusion. Why should you elect me for mayor? The reason I'm running for mayor is to provide that choice for change. We need the face of Oshkosh to lead in accountability. That is timely and accurate information, for city government, from city government with measurable results for tax dollars. We need the face of Oshkosh to lead in access and inclusive city government rather than being cut off and silenced. I welcome new voices and faces and respond respectfully. We need the face of Oshkosh to lead in changing attitudes. Oshkosh has many voices. They no longer accept business as usual special interests. The people of Oshkosh are my special interests. My record demonstrates that I listen and respond. For example, it's no secret the landlords have problems with rental inspections. I've listened to their concerns with respect and worked to find solutions. I pride myself on meeting and listening to all parties, not just those I agree with. I care about your future now. My name is Lori Palmieri, the Choice for Change. I ask for your vote on April 2nd.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, this is a little bit different. I'm going to ask you each to ask your opponent one question about a city public policy issue. And since this is intended to be a dialogue, then you have a chance to rebut and exchange views. So for example, when Lori asks a question of Steve, then he will have 1 minute to answer, she will have 1 minute to rebut that, and he will have 1 minute for a response. Okay, so let's do that. Lori, ask a question of Steve.
Okay, thanks, Margie. Mayor, you're on the board for Greater Oshkosh Healthy Neighborhoods. Besides creating more neighborhood associations, how do you plan to engage those residents, including renters, that want to be a voice for change in their neighborhood, and what tools would you provide them?
Well, first of all, clarify change. You keep saying change. What do you mean by change? Not all change is good.
Well, the residents that want to be a voice for change and they want to have more representation amongst the decisions that we make.
Okay. All of our boards and commissions, including organizations like OH&I, are very open. I mean, I've made this comment before, and I may be drifting from your question, but it's very difficult to people serve any group in the city. I have spent 4 years as mayor and more years than that on the council trying to get people on boards and commissions. It's hard. We can't get a lot of diversity. We can't get young people. We can't get those that represent the city. As far as our neighborhoods, the neighborhood associations have to come together and start rebuilding their neighborhoods. What GoH and I can do is we can provide the guidance, we can provide the financial incentives to bring together. And if they pattern themselves after a successful neighborhood, which is Stevens Park, Miller's Bay, I think they have a chance of becoming very good, strong instruments of change in their community. But again, we can't get people involved in these different organizations. So,
Okay, let's see what Lori has to say to that.
So I live in a high rental central city neighborhood, and it's interesting that you bring up being patterned after successful neighborhoods. It's been my observation that not all neighborhood associations are created and treated equally. Some operate more like homeowners associations exclusively. I would work with planning and community development to create measurable goals for the inclusion of tenant groups and landlords to be included in the resource allocation for demonstrable results. And I guess I just would be interested in your views on being very open, and when you say we can't get diversity, can you give some examples of that?
Yeah, as I said, I spent years trying to get diversity on our boards and commissions to almost no avail. Margie's smiling, she knows what I'm talking about. As far as the neighborhood associations, I grew up in Middle Village, and I saw what, when I was a kid once, was a very nice neighborhood. There were, we called them flats back then. They're duplexes, owner-occupied, well-maintained. As the schools, we had schools back then. We had Dale, we had Lincoln, we had Campus School, St. Peter's. As those schools left, the neighborhoods went downhill. Before you were in council, you lobbied very hard for 2 neighborhood parks in Middle Village, which the city built. The city is not fond of the cost of maintaining these pocket parks. I asked you about all the weeds in these little pocket parks. You said it was bad soil. There's a concept called pulling weeds. Neighborhoods have to get together and pull the weeds to make the neighborhood better.
Thank you, Steve. Do you have a question for Lori?
I do. Your campaign slogan states you are the choice for real change, yet you have served on the council for 3 years. So what type of change would you bring to City Hall and to the city of Oshkosh?
Oh, that's a good question. So when I talk about the choice for real change, and yes, you're correct, I've been on council for 3 years now. I've been working in neighborhoods, though, for quite a bit longer, both here in Oshkosh and in Milwaukee. But the choice for real change is really about changing business as usual practices and doing things the way we've always done, but then giving ourselves credit for being so wonderful. I do think that we've had a lot of positive things in terms of brick and mortar, but our processes and our people as priorities and the accountability and the accessibility, we need to be more welcoming and we need to be more inclusive.
Okay, Steve, do you have anything to follow up with that?
I will follow up to that. Yes, we have been changing for a decade. It's been a very rapid change. The city experienced, many decades of doing nothing, and I think the school district is suffering because of their buildings. The city is suffering because the streets, we've had a huge flooding issue. Some of those have been addressed, but it's been a reluctance on the community's part to invest in the future of the community. I think the turning point, the big change, and I was very supportive of Oak Lawn. The citizens actually said, we understand we have to invest in our future, and I think that was a springboard for everything else that has happened. There's a different enthusiasm in town. People like what they see. I get a lot of comments from people in the store or anywhere that they like the changes. Visitors here are saying, what's going on? It's so different. People who grew up here, moved away, have come back. They're just kind of astounded at the changes in the city.
Okay, Lori, do you have a rebuttal to that?
I guess the other piece that I would, clarify there too is that changing attitudes. Attitudes are changing here. We do have more voices coming to the table, and they are appreciative of some of those brick and mortar accomplishments, but they really want to be part of the process. It's our job to include them.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to the questions from the panel, and they will be submitting questions of their own or from the audience. And we'll let Karen ask the first question of Lori.
Deputy Mayor, I'm going to keep on the subject of neighborhoods for a moment. What are the most important factors in stabilizing and improving neighborhoods? What can be done to revitalize our neighborhoods and to help ensure a balance of owner-occupied residences?
So stabilizing and improving neighborhoods. One of them is actually trying to balance the owner occupancy with tenants, but those neighborhoods, all neighborhoods are not created equal. And the city, we were very well intentioned when we started creating neighborhood associations. We wanted to get those social connections and we wanted to have more participation. But we treated them all as if they were the same. Not all neighborhoods have the same resources. So one of the things we have to start is by recognizing that and doing more of a custom rather than an off-the-shelf solution. As far as increasing owner occupancy, in those neighborhoods such as mine where we're 80% rental, I think that we have to get better at telling our story and making those resources available. In some of the neighborhoods we have high home ownership, and those are the more successful neighborhoods, but not all of our neighborhoods equate to that.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Steve?
I think the success of the neighborhood associations is it's a grassroots. You have to take ownership of your neighborhood. Every neighborhood is different. The issue of home ownership, I think half the city is probably rental by now. A lot of it's concentrated in the older section of the city. We, the city, have developed programs to help people convert single-family homes, or maybe not two-family homes, back to single-family homes. The council is talking about increasing the amount of funding we will apply to this. That's the first step. We need the people to move back into the neighborhoods. And it's also working with the rental associations. They have got to realize they have a role in this. They have to realize that, number one, they're running a business. Number two, if they maintain their properties, their equity will improve in the properties they own. But I think home ownership is.
Thank you, Steve.
Oh.
Okay, Kathy, do you have a question for our candidates, starting with Steve?
I do. Been wanting to ask this question since January, and I'm going to do it. Talking about poverty. The
Yep.
school district's annual report was released in January, and it had some startling statistics to me. 41% of the school district students live beneath the federal poverty level, including 210 homeless students. And I know that traditionally the city's role has focused on infrastructure and the county's role has been social services. But there's more and more conversation about whether the city should take a stronger role, and what should that role be, in working with the county, schools, nonprofit agencies to address some of the problems of poverty in Oshkosh.
Oh, who starts? Steve.
Oh, is that
Steve starts?
is that the
Okay.
end of your question?
It's a big one.
It is
It
a
was
big
a long one. We do see poverty increasing. We see homeless increasing. And as I said at the beginning, we see the increase in violence against children. I think it is a community issue. Some organization has to take the lead, and I think probably the most visible is the city. But the city's role and a mayor's role is to bring the other entities together, as I've done for this unity and community. We have to bring the school district, county, faith organizations, service groups together to start, how do we address this issue? It's not a new issue, it's a growing issue. It's not strictly an Oshkosh issue. I think we have to look more than just we have to look at more than just the city of Oshkosh too. It's the surrounding area, because those same children living in poverty are also going to our schools. So it's a much broader issue, and how do we address it? At one time, churches took care of a lot of the poor people. Well, if you look across the street, 2 of the 3 churches are for sale. We've lost that element of protection in the community. So how do we replace that, working in a holistic fashion to address this issue?
Okay, thank you. Lori?
I'm just going to ask you to read that one more time.
I'm sorry, it was a big one. The school district report said that 41% of students live beneath the federal poverty level, 210 homeless students. And I said the city's role has traditionally been infrastructure, and the county has done the social service thing, but should the city take a stronger role in working with any agency to address problems of poverty?
Absolutely. Absolutely, the city should. And I think we have touched on that and kind of checked some boxes with, maybe doing, once or twice a year joint meetings with, perhaps the school district. We used to have a county health department, or a city health department that's now the county. And I think once that happened, we kind of lost sight of what public health in the city was really about. And especially when it comes to equity and health in more of our policies, it can be anything from the city working across the lines with those county social services. Just today, actually, I was on the phone with a couple of folks talking about some housing concerns, and I do believe that we need to reach across many agency lines and break down those silos and do more for our people who are living in these, what they call ALICE. I can't remember how the acronym goes, but it's basically working poor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. That is a big topic for 1 minute, I
It
know.
is.
You both
Sure
did a
is.
good job, thank you.
May I add one short word to this?
One word.
Parents.
Okay, thank you.
Oftentimes,
An important word.
the word parent is sort of not brought into this dialogue.
And parents are to blame because of poverty?
Yeah, if you want to be a parent, you better be ready to be a parent.
We'll move on to our next question, and that will come from Karen. And it will be directed first to Lori.
All right, so this is a follow-up question. Oh, boy. Affordable, safe family housing is one of the most important factors in addressing poverty. What steps can the city take to play a more active role in addressing this issue in cooperation with the Oshkosh Winnebago County Housing Authority?
So, affordable, safe housing, what steps can the council do? So we obviously have a council representative who sits on that, and I have just been appointed to that recently, so I'm coming up to speed on what exactly they're doing. One of the things that we have to look at is a housing first model. And in light of the fact that we have higher levels of mental health and substance abuse, and we have, again, these children who are living in homes that may not necessarily be the safest, we have to move beyond just our rental inspections program and perhaps look at things like taking some of our lands from the land bank with the redevelopment authority and providing some more creative solutions, looking at small home models, looking at transitional opportunities for those families. Oh, I see my limit.
Okay, thank you. You were on such a roll.
I know. Lots more.
Okay, so then we need to have Steve's thoughts.
All right. The safe, affordable housing, the definition of what is affordable, I know there are federal guidelines and so forth, but it has to be clean and safe, period. And that goes back to the rental inspection program because such a large percentage of the city is rental. That's the first step. There is not a lot of affordable housing, period, in this city. And by that, I had a friend look at what was available as of the middle of January in the city of Oshkosh, homes between $50,000 and $100,000. If you get below 50, they're getting kind of rugged and kind of rough. There are 54 homes, and those are considered starter homes, low-income homes. So there's not much of an inventory of homes in this city. On the GOH and I, we've talked with an architect. Can you design infill homes that are modest, that will fit into the character of an older neighborhood, but yet provide a clean, safe environment for the family at a price that people can afford? And that's going to be tough to do, very tough to do, but it's doable.
Okay, thank you. Our next question goes first to you, Steve, and Kathy will ask it to you.
Oshkosh has a deficit of park and green space. Will you, as mayor, take an active role to elevate park acquisition to a higher priority for city funding and action?
Yes, I would. Now, I know the numbers show that we're low, but I don't think those numbers include the amount of green space surrounding our schools. I'm not sure if it includes things such as the county park. I think we and the Plan Commission have to take a more active role in how much development land does go into park space. So my answer is yes. But it's getting developers to understand the necessity for having parks in their developments. I look at, my neighborhood, we've got Stevens Park, which is not heavily used considering, but no one knows it exists either. So it's kind of a catch-22, but it's used heavily in the spring, and that's about it after the baseball season, so.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Lori?
So what the mayor's really saying is that he would advocate for reframing how we quantify the green space, not necessarily that he would advocate for more acquisition. I have And I do frequently advocate for that. Going back 10 years ago, a little more than that, organizing Middle Village around the green space, which, by the way, is not a park. We were allowed to use it. If it was a park, it would be maintained. But in any event, park acquisition, I have and did. We fought to get a little yellow dot put on the map in the central city to add to the to supplement where that deficit is. And when it comes to the development, you know, we have policies and guidelines where we say that we're going to limit the amount of impervious surface, but consistently this council continues to vote to allow exceeding those limits, and it's become managing by exception.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Okay, Karen, you have a question for Lori first?
I do. If you believe that city expenditures need to be reduced, what are possible areas where you see that cuts can be made? Are these areas currently in need of increased funding that might require an increase in tax? Are there areas currently in need of increased funding that might require an increase in taxes? And if so, what are they?
So I believe that the council forum earlier, that was somewhat addressed by a couple of the candidates. And, you know, at budget time, it is challenging, right? You look at whether or not you're going to be able to add positions or not. I'm not going to talk about adding positions or cutting positions, but what we really need to do is look at priority-based budgeting a little more specifically and inventory the different programs that we are doing, and where is the overlap in the community where somebody else is providing that service. We also look at, we also have to sometimes make difficult decisions on quality of life, and some of those amenities that we love and hold so dear, you know, how are we being creative in bringing some of those services and programming together? So I think that it's not just about looking at cutting or adding, it's also looking at merging. You know, you can use the example of perhaps intergenerational opportunities at the senior center, and I'm out of time.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
Thank you. You heard the group before us talk about the pains of budgeting. That issue is not going to go away. You know, when we reluctantly have to raise taxes, we're also taxing ourselves on the council. But I think my biggest concern is what Madison is doing to us, and I've been pretty vocal about that, that we cannot continue to rely on property taxes, not just here, but throughout the state. I'm an active member of the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. We are addressing this issue with our legislatures that they've got to find other incoming producing sources. They keep cutting us. They mandate things. We're mandated to do things. They cut from us. The biggest one is what's called public municipal services. That is the services we provide police and fire for the university, the prison, other government buildings. We used to get 80-some cents on the dollar for that. We're down to 30 or 38 cents, but they keep cutting and cutting and cutting. The university tears down a house for parking. That's off the tax rolls. So I think it's, we have to pressure on Madison.
Thank you, Steve. Would you guys advocate for 2 minutes, 3 minutes? What would it take normally?
2.
Okay. We'll take that under consideration for our next forum. For now, we're still going with the 1 minute because we have time for a few more questions. And this question will go to Steve from Karen. Am I right? Or did you ask the last one?
I think I just asked
I
that.
think she.
Okay, Kathy will ask Steve a question.
You said it's the last one?
No,
No. Oh, good.
no, we have more.
Oh, good, good. Public internet access. What can the city do itself or in cooperation with somebody to increase the availability of internet access to Oshkosh residents?
Well, I think it's critical for everyone, regardless of age group. The city has to become actively involved, and if it means we have to find money in the budget to do it, I think we have to do it. If you don't have it, it puts people at a great disadvantage. We hear what's going on in the rural parts of the state, what is happening to children and their ability to learn. I think We don't want to put our kids in that situation, so we've got to, I guess, a friend of mine used to say, we have to belly up to the bar and pay for it.
Thank you. Lori?
Yes, so the digital divide, the great digital divide, I believe that one of the things that we do have currently is we do have some places, such as the library, my favorite place, where you can access free internet. There are a couple of places, right? And we need to work with the school district because the school district did, enable our students to have these devices, and, we need to work with I think surrounding neighborhoods and the neighborhood associations as well. And one of the other things is getting the word out too about the low-cost $19 federal program that allows that $19 internet access for families that are on free and reduced lunch or under the poverty line. So I do believe that we could supplement that by expanding some of those areas' Wi-Fi that we already have. And that would be the way I would support public access and internet. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. I'm so confused. Who's asking this question?
This is me.
Okay,
We have a submitted
Karen.
question, and I think we're starting with
Lori.
Lori. Okay. Are you aware of any plans in the works for the development of the Pioneer?
Any development in the works? Let's see here. I have heard many rumblings and many opinions and much speculation, but I have not seen any official plans submitted in a formal way.
Thank you.
Okay. Steve?
My answer is very similar. I do know that the developer is going to tear down the remaining buildings. They're in the process of taking the asbestos out. The big issue, anyone I've talked to, is will whatever goes there cash flows? And that seems to be not the case. And if you recall, the Pioneer, when it was active, if it had a busy event, people parked on the street. And it wasn't the greatest place when it was raining or winter. If they were to add on to the Pioneer to get more meeting space, they would lose parking. So that's the issue. Is there enough space there to build something that someone can make some money with? I know what I'd like to see happen to the property, but that has a rather large price tag to it. But you talk about more park space. If that property cannot be developed profitably, would it make a nice additional park? The harbor becomes a city property, and we make money with the park, and we run some sort of a restaurant like they do in Milwaukee. Barlotto's does that. It's city property, but they rent the restaurant, so there's some activity there.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Our next question comes from Kathy and goes to Steve first.
Okay. Do you support partial city funding to underwrite free bus transportation for Oshkosh students? And I know this is a topic that has been on the radar.
That goes to you first.
I know.
Okay. Sorry.
This may sound nothing is free. And I heard the questions before, comments about budgeting. I mean, budgeting is a fact of life. That is the biggest undertaking the council does. It takes months to do and so forth. We keep hearing the city should do this, the city should do that, the city should pay for that. That means the taxpayers will have to pay for all these things they want. And how do we convince them that it's in their best interest to pay for these services? I think we should do something for the young people for busing, but there was a small group formed about a year ago, and one meeting, and that was the end of it. And I think I said, if we look at this issue of busing for students, we have to look at the issue of providing bus service to people, second shift, that type of thing. So it's an entire city issue, not just students, which means we'll be increasing our bus service, period. We might as well take into consideration people who need the bus to get to their jobs.
Okay, thank you. Karen, you have a question for?
Oh, wait.
Lori.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, good.
Oh, I am so sorry, Lori. Would you like to weigh in on that?
I'd like to, thank you.
Okay,
Mark.
please do.
So would I support partial city funding for bus transportations to be free for students? I was actually part of one of those meetings, and there was more than one, and there have been multiple discussions, and probably to the tune of hundreds of hours of discussion, and this is important. Whether or not it's paid for by the city, by private organizations, or by the school district. The school district has the option, but they also have an exemption if there is a city transit service. We do have a responsibility to provide the public transportation. If we're looking at adding this car service, I can't remember what it stands for, but our economic development, GO EDC, is providing that voluntary free rides for people to get to work. Those students going to school, that is their work, and they are the future workers. So I do think it is important. I don't necessarily support us financing it entirely.
Okay, thank you. First, I don't give you 2 minutes, then I don't even give you 1 minute. We'll get better. Okay. Karen?
Yes.
You're going to ask a question of Lori, am I right?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. So, with unity and community being one of the city manager's goals for 2019, it obviously is high. Diversity and inclusiveness is high on the Common Council's agenda. Is the focus of a one-day event going to be enough to engage a real conversation on diversity and inclusiveness in our community? And what else will you do to engage others?
And I'm first, right?
You're first.
All right. Unity and Community was a very enjoyable event. It was a great, first step. What I could foresee is a Unity and Community 2.0 that's not a one-day static event. While that was enjoyable and entertaining, and I think it was a good start, we need to be more mobile and flexible and take these multicultural experiences out to the neighborhoods in both a receiving and giving format. And what I mean by that is people who are not from Oshkosh or who have different views or cultures or race or ethnicity need to have an opportunity to be received and welcomed in those neighborhoods, as well as the other way around.
Thank you. Steve?
All right, since Unity and Community is my baby, I began that, I think, 3 years ago with working with Sylvia Carey Butler at the university. Our goal was to say, yes, we are becoming more diverse, but we are far from being inclusive. Look around at the organizations you belong to. How inclusive are they? How diverse are they? Not very. We brought together a steering committee. It was loosely formed. We have Native Americans, African Americans, Hmong, you name it, they're there. And it's our one goal is to bring this festival together, make it grow. I wanted to give it to the city manager as a goal because it is a city event. I'm not always going to be here to co-chair it. It's got to be a city event that creates its own life, and it's got to stay in one area. We're bringing in foods from around the world, people around the world, music from around the world. I don't want it going out in neighborhoods right now. We've got to get this organization up and running. This year's will be on April 13th at the Convention Center, so please come. And it's free, family free.
You got extra time for that commercial, Steve.
Because I said free.
Good job. Okay, our next question comes from Kathy and goes to Steve first.
Do you value historic buildings and the role they play in Oshkosh's revitalization and economic growth? And this is a submitted question.
Well, yes, I do. Since I'm on the Landmarks Commission, I'm also a board member of the Winnebago County Historical Society. Maintaining historical buildings, number one, is a very green way for a city to go. In most cases, they can, I'll say, recycled. The cost is always a bit more, but they're worth, it's our history. These buildings are not only architecturally, historically, Many of them have very historical events that took place inside the building. In some cases, those outweigh the buildings. So yes, we have to maintain them, we have to work around them. We have to develop more tax incentives locally to help people rehab these buildings. Owning a historic building, which I do, is not cheap. You do need some tax help with these buildings. But it's worth it. I've done programs with kids at Oshkosh North Communities Program, on Main Street. Here are these buildings explaining, back when I was in high school, we had things called dime stores. They look at me, what is a dime store?
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Lori?
Thank you. Do I value historical buildings and their potential for contributing to economic growth? Absolutely. One of the things that I really enjoyed when I first moved to Oshkosh from north of here was the fact that we had not torn down all of those beautifully preserved, and some not so beautifully preserved, right? But I happen to not mind a few scars and scratches. I do believe that they contribute to our economic growth because it keeps us from looking like Disneyland, right? We have these uniquely preserved buildings. And then the other piece of it is that it allows for, but the thing that I think that we have to look at is in preservation, I think we have to stretch ourselves to consider those adaptive reuse and those new uses, such as like the Howard, right? That's a wonderful example of a new way of using an older space, and that's, this pristine building. Oh, I'm out of time. So yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we're going to have our opportunity for clarification. You may each have 30 seconds, if you wish, to either clarify or rebut something that you heard during this forum. Or you can use it, as the council people did, as your way to tell people to vote for you, but we already know that. Is there anything you'd like to clarify, rebut, or share, Steve?
Just a comment, please vote for me to keep the continue moving forward. I mean, we are on a roll right now, and the worst thing we can do is step backwards and behave like we did a decade ago. The budget will continue to be a problem. I think one of the issues, and you didn't ask the question of us, is at some point the economy is going to turn. And it is up to us to be prepared for that downturn in the economy. I don't know the magnitude, when it's going to happen. I don't think anyone does. If I did, I would not be sitting here. But,
Okay, thank you, Steve. This was a 30-second one. That makes it even harder, I know.
It does.
Lori, you have 30 seconds.
All right. So the mayor sits on the redevelopment authority, and the mayor spoke earlier about infill development and these conceptual plans. I guess the thing I'm a little bit concerned about is that I've been hearing this for like several years now, and we have a whole list of properties that are not in redevelopment districts that we acquire based on more of an opportunity. And we're doing some land banking, but we don't have plans. The RDA does not have specific plans for that. There's, always talk, and I think when we actually start putting together the plans and start utilizing those, we'll be better off.
Okay, thank you both very much. This concludes the forum for Oshkosh Mayor. The election is Tuesday, April 2nd. You may vote for one of these two candidates for a 2-year term as Oshkosh Mayor. The polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., and you may register when you go to vote on Election Day. Take a proof of residence with you. Everyone must show a voter ID. Go to myvote.wisconsin or wi.gov to find information on registration, ballots, acceptable photo IDs, and polling places. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Winnebago County and Oshkosh Media, I want to thank all the candidates who shared with us tonight, and my panel members, Karen Schneider and Kathy Propp, for participating in this forum. And finally, thanks to you, our audience, and those tuning in via television, radio, Oshkosh Media, YouTube, and streaming video. Our democracy depends on citizen involvement. Please vote on April 2nd.
Yeah, don't wait.
Thank you.
We need cue cards.
Don't wait till April 22nd.